This is part 2 of the interview with Adam Fletcher, international youth and community engagement expert, as well as workshop facilitator for HSC Catalyst Miami. I'm Cheryl Mizell, and this is 99 Jam's Community Voices.
What do you think is the biggest mistake or the biggest error that people make in working or attempting to work with young people?
Let me add a caveat by saying that this is also about parenting. One of the things that our young people more than ever experience today is a false reality through the internet. The internet teaches any young person that, oh, you know that band that you just heard last night at the block party, and you love that song that they played and you'd never heard of them before? Then young people can go to iTunes, and for 99 cents they buy that single. And then they write a review of that single that says, this is the best thing I've ever heard. And then they post the review, the address to that review on Facebook to their 1,300 friends and say, this is the best thing I've ever heard. Out of that 1,300 friends, 700 of them buy the single. And then suddenly overnight, they've shared it with 1,300 of each of their friends, and suddenly overnight this band has sold thousands of copies of their single, and they're the biggest band on iTunes. And then in turn, a 14-year-old kid can go to Wikipedia, write an article on the band next to the 60-year-old with 3 PhDs, and it can be equally as legitimate as long as they're following the rules of Wikipedia. So young people learn this false reality that they have all this power. And then they wonder why, as soon as they get home, mom's telling them, you have to do this, you can't do this, you have to do this. They wonder why, as soon as they get to school, the teacher's telling them, you can't learn this, you have to learn it this way, and you have to learn it with these people at this time. They wonder why society is structured in a way that feels like it's against them, because it's a false reality that they face on the internet. Now, that doesn't make the internet wrong. It makes us not right for learning how to teach it. Because what we're not teaching young people is that they can live in a society that does actively engage them in the same way that the internet promises. Society is real. It's just like video games. Video games are not real. They are an exercise. The internet is an exercise in power for young people. Let's make the experience of power more real for them. Now, what that means isn't turning over the keys to the 16-year-old and saying, hey, teach yourself how to drive on the interstate. Have a good day. As responsible adults, response-able adults, we have the obligation and a moral imperative to teach young people as well as we can about civic engagement, about social engagement, about cultural engagement, about educational engagement. And if we don't do those things, we're failing our moral imperative. And then it goes back to the words of Dr. King, who ultimately said that it's every single one of us who has that responsibility of getting up and standing for nonviolence. And if we're not doing that work, then not only are we failing ourselves, we're failing the future and we're failing the present. We need to catalyze the present in order to have the future that we're dreaming of.
So if my listeners want to reach out to you, how can they find you, Adam?
We have 3 websites that folks can go and use at any point. Freechild.org focuses on youth engagement in communities. Soundout.org focuses on student engagement in schools. And CommonAction.com is the name of my consulting organization. We work nationally and internationally to promote this work and to really help folks engage in their communities. So they can find me in any one of those 3.
Looks like we have about a minute or so here. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you would like to share with our audience?
I think that one of the things that we end up doing oftentimes with young people is encouraging them to see social ills as their own, which is powerful, especially when young people learn about anti-oppression. So to identify racism, genderism, homophobia, cultural discrimination, all is very real things. But ironically, we're not teaching about the very thing that affects all young people equally, no matter what socioeconomic background they come from, what racial background they come from. And I don't know why we don't teach about this. Maybe it's just that we don't know. But at the middle of all of this work, we have 2 gigantic problems. One problem is called adultism. Adultism is to youth what heterosexism is to gay and lesbians. So adultism is favoring adults simply because we're adults. We run society. We run the show. And young people not only are taught adultism, but they actually perpetuate it by disbelieving in their own ability and their own necessity and their own power and creativity. We teach them this. Our society encultures it and makes it part of the norm. Now, this real problem that's coming out of adultism is the flip side of it. It's called ephobiphobia. Epha is Greek for youth. It's the fear of youth. In England, they've identified this as a real phenomenon that's driving housing and people's housing choices, where they're going to live. Old people don't want to live in neighborhoods where there's young people. They're moving away because there's too many young people in this neighborhood. They're literally afraid of youth. Now, the place where ephobiphobia came from originally in academic study was in libraries. Librarians in the early 90s identified ephobiphobia as defeating their profession. So they actually have movements inside the American Library Association to defeat ephobiphobia in libraries. We need those movements inside policing, inside schools, inside nonprofits, inside government, inside all of these different institutions that routinely disclude youth, not because we think they're bad, just because we're afraid of them. And then we need to defeat adultism in turn and teach young people not to oppress themselves, not to accept the oppression of adults, and not to perpetuate the very myths against them that our society is labeling them with every day. And so I think that ultimately this question of engagement comes around to addressing the real problems and then taking real action. And that's what my work is all about, is how to take people into those spaces and then move to the next place beyond.
Adam, thank you so much. That's been quite enlightening, and you've given us a great deal to think about, especially on this MLK weekend, and we certainly appreciate you. Adam Fletcher, Youth Engagement Expert.
Immediately following the Imagine Miami Meaningful Youth Engagement Interactive Workshop, hosted by HSC Catalyst Miami and presented by Adam Fletcher, the International Youth Engagement Expert that you just heard, I spoke to members of the audience to find out what they thought of the workshop and how it could help them to engage youth in their communities. The first person I spoke to was Carlos Valdez, karate instructor and tutor with Abriendo Puertas.
My reaction to today's seminar is very amazing. It was very welcoming and loving to see that there's a lot of people out here caring for the youth. A lot of us sees these youth sometimes like animals, like they're just a piece of trash or something like that, because of either they are involved in violence, they're involved in drugs, they're involved in gangs. In reality, each youth out there has a future, has a life, whether they're in jail, whether they're on the wrong track. They all have a meaning in here, and they all have value.
Was there anything particular that you learned that you're going to take back to your organization and be able to apply?
Definitely. I learned a lot today here with Adam. He's amazing. I wish he could come back. I learned how to get them more engaged. A lot of times they're they're participating, but they get bored or they just are lazy. So I learned ways how I could keep them engaged and keep them working.
Excellent. Thank you so much for talking to us. Carlos Valdez with Abriendo Puertas. Next, I have Yamile, who is the operations director with Mission Paz, a ministry here in Miami-Dade County, and I'm going to talk to her for a few minutes to get her reaction to the Imagine Miami Youth Engagement workshop that took place today.
It was very interesting to come. I'm so thankful that I came. Actually, it has equipped me to working with the youth and to proceed with the programs, future programs, and to apply all the skills that I learned here in my everyday life.
Can you tell me, as a parent, what are your thoughts about what you learned today? Anything you're going to take right back to your own home?
Yes, of course. In particular, the involvement and to listen to the youth and to actually put to practice what they have to say, to take in and in consideration and really take it in and explore their decision making. Sometimes it might not be right with me, but it is a good idea, and just follow through.
The parts about where they talked about the equality of youth, no, they don't have the same powers that we do, but they need to feel like they are human beings who do have some input. What did you think about that?
That was something definitely that has impacted me, and this is what I tried to say earlier. I have to understand where they're coming from and give them the opportunity to be rulers and great leaders.
Okay, and we also have the senior minister with Mission Paz, who also participated today, and I'd like to get his reaction as well. What are your thoughts about this? Well, it was actually from 9 until 2 p.m., so there was a full day of activities. What did you think?
Well, I loved it because we saw the youth come in, and you can really see the atmosphere change when they were here. And it was just a whole set of excitement. And it was sad to see them leave and just to get their inputs and to find out what is it that they really want. What is it that's really on their minds? And, I always have a saying, I love how families can come together and they can just sit down and have that dinner table. Well, this was kind of like a dinner table type of deal. We all sat down, we all shared the ideas, and it was a great thing. And I believe that Miami needs to change, and this type of change is what's going to come up and about. The youth is one of the keys for them to, to learn and to understand. And we are the tools that they are just coming up and about for them. So I thank you for this wonderful time. And, we're a brand new church who's starting out in the city of Doral. We have a lot of hopes, and we want to make a difference in this great Miami. So thank you for this time.
Was there anything particular about the workshop? I mean, I know you talked about the youth when they actually got involved, but the things that Mr. Fletcher talked about, was there anything in particular that stood out that you feel like you can take back and use at your organization?
Absolutely. One of the things that I love was the testing part. When they come about and they want to test you out and they want to say, hey, what do you think about this? And just to, kind of respond with in the same level for them to know that, hey, I'm listening. Hey, I'm right here. What is it? How can we work together? I'm taking back that we are going to work together and we are going to make a change. And it's about changing. And this is the time for change. And I believe it strongly. And I believe this new, ways that we're coming up and about, especially now with technology, because now they talk to you and they text you at the same time. I believe we can come up and about and say, hey, I'm right here. I'm listening to you. I know you're texting, but I know you're listening. I also want to listen what you got to say. And I believe that. I believe we got to listen a little bit more.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to me. That was Yamile Jimenez Soto with Mission Paz, as well as the senior pastor, Ricky Fernandez. Okay, I found one young person or still left in the building, Yahara, and she participated in the youth engagement workshop as well, and I just wanted to talk to you and get your thoughts about today's workshop. What do you think about it?
I think it was wonderful. It gave you a lot of strategies on how to bring the youth, back to the community, and good pointers on how to talk to youth and not, push them away but bring them back.
Do you think that it will make a difference for you in an organization?
Yes, they will. Very sad how we're losing the youth out in the streets to violence, gun, gangs, drugs. And this is a way to bring them back in a positive way, like church, after school programs, dancing, singing, something to get them out of the streets. And these were good strategies on how to do that.
Thank you so much for talking to us. Yahira Alvarez.
Please send me your thoughts, suggestions, or comments about today's show on Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, or WEDR.com. You'll find me listed as Cheryl, CHERYL, Mizell, MIZELL. I'll look forward to hearing from you. Join me next week on Community Voices for another interesting topic right here on 99 Jams.